Hello, I'd like to welcome everybody back, Alabama Care. We are in Decatur, Alabama today, and we have Mr. Derek Greer with us. And Mr. Greer is the Employment Resource Specialist at Region 1. And today we're going to be talking about supported employment and employment services. And at this point, I'd like to hand it over. Mr. Greer, if you'd introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the honor and the privilege of being able to join the Alabama Care Network today. I'm Derek Greer. I'm the Employment Resource Specialist here in Decatur, Alabama for the Alabama Department of Mental Health's Office of Supported Employment. I'm located in Region 1. I have two co-workers who are my counterparts in the Birmingham office, Region 5, the Mobile office, Region 3, and then our supervisor who's located in our central office down in Montgomery, Alabama. We focus on supported employment here in the state of Alabama and provide resources as well as technical assistance and training to providers.
Now, this is our first time in Decatur for a broadcast. So we appreciate you spending the morning with us and kind of showing us what Decatur is all about. Now, we always like to ask, are you originally from Alabama?
I am originally from Alabama, right down the road here. I was actually born just right across the road here in Decatur at Decatur General Hospital and grew up, graduated Hartselle High School, the town just south of here, and I currently now live in Arab, Alabama with my wife and 4 kids.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And is it Roll Tide or War Eagle?
Are you kidding me, man? Roll Tide all the way. Crimson blood, buddy.
We love to hear it. Now, we were talking a little bit before the broadcast about how long have you been working with ADMH and employment?
Well, I actually started with the Department of Mental Health as a contractor through the Disability Employment Initiative in 2014. At the close of that pilot program, which was brought into the state to help individuals with disabilities as a partner in the career centers, sort of navigate the path to supported employment. Once that grant came to a close, my partner in Birmingham, Virginia, Maddox, and I were brought on board full-time to work with the Office of Supported Employment here at ADMH. Now, during that time, Byron White and the department supervised the contract.
Yeah, so you guys are familiar with Mr. Byron White. You guys have seen him before at the conferences, and Mrs. Maddox is in Region 5, and I'm familiar with her as well. Now, a little bit of background, but you kind of live on a farm and take care of animals.
Yeah, see, I didn't know that was going to come up.
No.
Great. Yeah, man, my wife has a farm that I live on. So we do have animals, bees, chickens, turkeys, pigs. She's wanting to get some sheep out there and want to add cattle to it. And it's a family farm. It's actually my grandfather farmed it, and his dad and grandfather farmed it, and actually his great-grandfather settled the area there in Arab, just to the northwest, a small community when it was first settled.
So it's been in the family for quite a while.
Yes, sir, a long time.
And I grew up on a farm, and I think it is so beneficial for kids growing up on a farm to kind of work the land and be around the animals there. And you mentioned that you had some bees.
I do.
And you 140, 150 hives at one point?
Yeah, we had a lot of hives back. Before I got into this field of work and was going through college, we had a lot of hives. And then in the tornado outbreak, we lost all of the hives as the tornado ripped through the roof community. We lost all of our hives and production area and equipment. We didn't lose any life, but we did lose property. There were people who suffered much greater losses than we did, but previous to that, we had quite an operation. We sold honey. I shipped it worldwide, actually. I shipped some honey worldwide, but the majority of it stayed here in the southeastern U.S. And it was all raw farm honey. And I fell in love with honeybees, and my kids did too. We learned how to work them. And even now, my kids go out to our current hives, and they take care of the hives. I don't even get to anymore because the kids jump out and monitor and take care of the hives. They're really excited about taking care of the bees.
And growing up on a farm myself, we also raised bees. It was always the thing that we would give out at Christmas to family members, some honey and maybe a little present, stuff like that.
Right.
Now, you said you were selling raw honey there. Was it used in certain products?
Yeah, I mean, okay. So there was raw honey that we shipped out to back in around 2010, 2011. Haagen-Dazs had a flavor called I Heart Honeybees, and they contracted with local farmers all over the Southeast. A lot of people didn't know that this was produced in Atlanta, Georgia, and so we would ship honey over for that, for the I Heart Honeybees flavor, and that was a really kind of cool thing to see the product in the stores, because previous to that it was a lot of farmers markets or local markets would carry the raw honey, or we would ship it to individuals. One of my favorite customers was the boxer George Foreman.
Okay.
Yeah, who bought honey from us on a regular basis. He connected with me through he's a big fan of German Shepherds, and so he had a German Shepherd and named Champ, and Champ was trained by a man in Parches Cove, Alabama, and who was a good friend of mine, and made the connection. And George liked the honey, and so I'd send him a gallon of honey every 6 or 8 months. He would give me a call, and he needed honey. So,
That's amazing. That's the Champ.
That was kind of a cool thing. That was probably the coolest person that I ever sold to.
Yeah, I imagine shaking his hand. It's kind of like these are pretty rough hands.
He's a big dude. Yeah, big dude.
Very cool. Well, today we're going to be talking about, as you mentioned, supported employment and employment services. If you could kind of give us a brief history of kind of employment services in the disability community.
Sure. Well, I came through, I mentioned the tornadoes that came through, and it sort of shifted the direction of my life. I was a consumer at that time as I was finishing up college of vocational rehabilitation services myself. And so I navigated that system, and I had a job coach upon graduation, and they helped my VR counselor and my job coach assisted me in helping to locate the opportunities where I am today, and through a lot of support, that's how I got here. There's a lot of moving parts and moving components, and that's really what supported employment is all about. Supported employment is about all of the moving parts and components coming together to provide that support for individuals who want to go back to work. The Rehab Act of I think it was 1973 really sort of sealed the deal when it came to working with individuals with disabilities to help them get the supports that they needed or that they wanted to be able to move into the community, be able to move into work. And then that was replaced in 2014, or amended in 2014, by the Workforce Innovations and Opportunities Act, or WIOA. And that really has a lot to do with vocational rehabilitation and State Department of Labor on that side. We really deal more with CMS, which is the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, and the home and community-based settings rule here at ADMH. But that was sort of the start, I think, back, and I'm sure there was a little more before that, but really that's kind of when things started taking off. Mm-hmm. And we, I guess kind of as a whole society here really started looking at employment for individuals with disabilities as a sort of a true possible solution to help improve qualities of life.
I love that you're touching on some of those acts and laws and legislation, because I think it's very important for individuals to know their rights, and that the community and the law has their back to stand up for what they want to do with employment, and kind of have that ammo with them there. Right. And I appreciate you sharing your story as a consumer. So you have experience on both sides and are able to relate with individuals on a personal level there.
I do. Alex, sometimes that gets me in a little trouble, man.
Yeah.
I don't tend to have the patience necessary sometimes for government operations. And that's just how it is. But you know what? We are all here to do the same thing, and that is to serve our consumers, our individuals with disabilities, folks with disabilities who want to go back to work and who want to work. And you know what? I went through the process, and it can be painful and it can be frustrating. It can be difficult to navigate sometimes if we don't have all of the information. And so being able to bring that information to families and consumers to help them navigate those waters and be able to find those missing pieces of the puzzle, man, is very rewarding when we find somebody who hits that final note, man, and they find that job that is a perfect fit for them, and they go to work, and sort of the trajectory of their life changes.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be productive member of society in that fashion where you're working with others. And there's a sense of accomplishment as a team when you get home at night, having a good long day of work. And everybody should be or is entitled to experience that. And so you're working, and the department's working to make sure that's more readily available for the community. Now, we do have a question here in the chat I'd like to acknowledge. Mrs. Kim Spangler says, does Mr. Greer know of any employment ops like Smile Farms for people with disabilities in Alabama? Are you familiar with Smile Farms?
I'm not familiar with Smile Farms. No, I'm not. I do know that our main focus here at the department is on integrated or community integrated employment. So that would be employment in the community at a community-based location, integrated workforces. So these are not specific areas where just individuals with disabilities work. We're looking more so for people under the home and community-based settings, final rules, to have the option to work in the community if that's what they desire. And that's where a lot of our focus is. Here at the department, we have, through the federal guidelines, we have until March of 2023 to implement the home and community-based final settings rule in its entirety, which will allow our individuals to make the choices of where they want their services provided. And these supported employment services would be services out in the community. Now, they can include things like employment small groups, which might be a small group of individuals with disabilities who are working together at a location out in the community. I would give an example up in Jackson County at an employer called Sano America. One of our providers up there has an employment small group up there that goes out and they work together. They're in the building with every other employee of Sano. They're in Jackson County. They're an integrated part of the workforce there, but they do work together in a specific area on a specific task. And so that would be an example of an employment small work group. And we've seen several people move out of that, which is our ultimate goal, into different areas of that plant and find integrated work. Whereas, Alex, if you and I were to walk around the plant, we're determining who has a disability and who does not have a disability becomes extraordinarily difficult. And that's really kind of the idea here is because even though some folks would look to some of these longer term supports, such as a job coach who may be with them every day, assisting and making sure that they understand the job tasks, or they stay on task, or they might use assistive technology to keep schedules or remind them of breaks or where to go when, or in manufacturing, putting certain parts together, or personal care at the work site, which is a waiver funded service. So somebody might come in and assist with things such as toileting needs and lunches and things of that nature. Aside from that, right, the whole idea here is to help bring in natural supports. So these would be coworker supports. These are folks who actually work there at the work site. It's integrated, and what we've seen more people in these integrated sites who at first might have been a little standoffish to individuals with disabilities, and a lot of that comes from not understanding or not being around individuals with disabilities before. And so some of that's rooted in fear, right? They don't want to offend, they don't want to upset anyone, they don't want to put themselves or someone else in a bad position. And then after a little while, what we see is this organic sort of evolution of this culture that begins to shift in the workplace. And these natural supports sort of step up, right? At our jobs, we have natural supports. Our friends and our coworkers support each other, at least ideally. And we see that happening there for individuals with disabilities, and that allows those job coaches to sort of fade away and those natural supports to come in and really meet the needs for the individuals with disabilities who are working.
That was amazing, and you hit on a lot of points there. But I think fear of the unknown. I think everyone kind of fears that. So if you're unfamiliar with something or you haven't had contact with a person, and so you kind of step back and you don't indulge or move forward there. But that's why I think it's really important to come in contact with all different types of communities growing up, and the integrated, communities growing up. But we've also had the opportunity to speak with some business owners that are employing people with disabilities, and they're kind of saying, it's taken our environment and everybody that works there more from a business to a family environment. And it totally changes the environment of the storefront. And I'll highlight one specific is Taziki's Mediterranean Restaurant here in Alabama. And they employ a certain percentage of disability in their stores, their storefront stores. And we got to speak with the owner of that, one of the owners. He said it's remarkable what these individuals can do and also the impact they have on all of their coworkers. Just to totally transform that store.
Yeah, and I mean, they won I think it was Small Employer of the Year award. It may have been Large Employer of the Year award a few years ago at our state chapter APSE conference, which is the Association of People for Supported Employment, because of the work they've done. And you make an excellent point there with Taziki's. It does change everything. Fear is a fear paralyzes. And we see this all too often. And so, when we're afraid of the unknown, we really are faced with that choice. Do we push forward or do we sort of revert back to what we were used to? And if we revert back to what we were used to, it inhibits the growth of that business. And when we do push forward, and we see this with Taziki's, with Santa America, the place I was talking about, with I've seen it at Polaris up in Huntsville, and many sites across the state of Alabama. We could name off tons of sites across the state of Alabama that would tell you the same thing that you heard from them, and that is, once we kind of got over that initial fear, we saw our business grow closer together. We saw our employees grow closer together. We started seeing support more with one another, and it extends past the walls of that business. I love to hear stories about our individuals who are going back to work, and they go back to work, and maybe again at the beginning things were a little bit standoffish out of fear or misunderstanding or not knowing how to interact properly. And then a few minutes down the road, we're hearing about people getting invited over to homes and barbecues and to watch football games and just hang out, just like all of a sudden they're no longer a person with a disability, they're just a person.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate goal, man. That's where we want to go with this, right?
Yeah, and through that, your work experience, I think a lot of people do that. You find your support network or some friends through work, and that's just a natural thing that happens.
Yeah.
So that work can provide a great reward for yourself, but it also gives you those connections. Now, the wordage there that you use and we use as the community is community-based and integrated employment. And you kind of broke that down. If you could give us some examples, so when somebody's driving down the street, they can say, that's community-based, or what exactly would that be? Just every storefront?
Well, just to make it as simple as possible, community-based is exactly that. It is community-based. It is out in the community. Previously, or before HCBS or the Home and Community-Based Settings Final Rule really started to become a part of our world, sheltered workshops were a thing here in Alabama, and we've worked very hard here in the state to move away from that. Now, there are still some sheltered workshops here in the state, but a lot of them are no longer in existence. And the people in sheltered workshops that have moved out into the community just simply do that. They move out into the community. And earlier I mentioned job coaches. There's another flip side of that as a job developer. Job developers work with the community and work with businesses out in the community to find opportunities. They may negotiate hours, wages on behalf of the individual with a disability that they're working with, how much the job coach does or doesn't do. They may even do what we call job carving, which is to go into a business and say, hey, look, I see an area that's not being met, or a need that's not being met, or maybe someone's being I hate to say overworked, but maybe they're kind of overextended, would be a better word, because their job duties now encompass something else that it originally didn't. And let's carve that little section out, and I've got somebody who can fill that spot. And that would be an example of job carving. And I can give a more specific example of that. But when I talk about community-based, it is exactly what it sounds like. It is out in the community, and integrated means basically just an integrated population. So everywhere we go, I'll tell you what I tell employers who are afraid of making this kind of leap, and I say to them, the truth is, and the bottom line is that you already employ people with disabilities. They're just not disclosed. You just don't know that they have disabilities. There are a lot of people who have disabilities that are working, that have been working, that will continue to work, that for some reason or another don't disclose their disability. Maybe they don't need to disclose their disability because that's a personal choice. And when someone sees it from that angle, and they may realize, you know what, I'm afraid to bring in people with disabilities because of insurance reasons. Oh, I hear that so much.
That's that would be one of the main objections.
That's a main objection, right? Yeah. Insurance, it's an insurance liability. I'm going to be very honest with you, Alex. It's most of the time it's and I love our business owners, but most of the time it's from business owners who really don't know the insurance policy, and they're kind of either operating out of fear or operating out of an area where they're not really sure how to bring someone in, or how to sort of leverage the supports that are out there to bring someone in. And so, business owners are busy. They're juggling a million balls, in the air and trying to keep them from falling to the ground. So, they don't want another one. But when we can open eyes and realize that individuals with disabilities can do quite a bit, just as anyone else can, without a disability, then we can be beneficial to the health and well-being of the employer. We can. I have a friend of mine that trains with me on a national level, and he would say, if you go into an employer, you can convince them of one of three things, they'll get on board, and that is that they can either save money, make money, or look good. And when it comes to hiring someone with a disability, if you can give a task such as job carving to someone as a way in the door, to get their foot in the door, and take that off of someone else who, let's say, gets paid a larger amount of money, then you've helped them actually save money by utilizing the time of that higher paid employee where it needs to be. So you've helped them save money. Sano America, and I'll go back to them, we talked about them earlier. That Employment Small Work Group recently received an award at Sano America for 1 million parts without a mistake. They make small brake lines for automobiles, Nissan, Toyota, things like that. So they make brake line parts. And so you've got these individuals that are making these really small components to go on these brake lines, and they received an award for 1 million parts without a single mistake. That's a lot of parts and components going through production without a single mistake.
That's a ton of parts, and it's a very critical part for safety.
It is, yeah. I mean, wouldn't you like to know that if you're driving down the road that your vehicle was created by someone who made 1 million parts without ever making a mistake?
Yes, I would.
And so the attention to detail is good, and looking good. A business looks good when a business is seen as a part of the community with a family environment, an inclusive environment. Come and work for us. We care about our employees, we support our employees, and we want to be visible to our community.
And you mentioned sometimes that the employer might be a little bit nervous or fearful, but that's just constant contact of having experience there. So it could be a little frustrating at first for you. For the department or for the individual to open the employer's eyes, and help them see what's possible there. And I'd never heard of job carving before, and I'm absolutely just enthralled with that. So you're saying there are individuals that will actually go and kind of assess the business and show them, this is like a free assessment for a business, show them where they can save money.
Yes.
Hire individuals with a disability, look good in the community, and be great all around.
Yeah, and this is great, and I would love to give some examples. And Okay, so there's an example I give when I talk about discovery training. We'll talk a little more about discovery in just a few minutes, but let me jump ahead. Of a hospital that was making packets. Right? If you've ever had surgery, Alex, or done a procedure at a hospital, right? You usually get a folder with all the paperwork in it and the disclaimers and the rights to privacy and the things you need to know and things like that. And that's a job. Somebody has to put those packets together. There was a hospital once that was paying registered nurses to work overtime, time and a half, to put those packets together. Nurses that were already overworked and stressed out were having to stay, and we had a provider go in and say, hey, you know what? I see this as a need. They assessed this and said, I see this as a need. We have a group of individuals that could come in and work with your folks, and they love putting things in order, and they're really good at it. Let me introduce you to them. And instead of paying these nurses $20 an hour plus time and a half, so plus overtime, so $30 an hour, why don't we bring them in at $10 an hour, and it'll save you $20 an hour, plus your nurses don't feel overworked, and they come back in for the next shift refreshed and good to go. And so they come in and so it increased the productivity of the nurses. It brought people in and sort of carved off this area that needed to be done. It's something that needed to be done, and it helped individuals find these jobs and now become a part of this environment. So, I mean, it was really sort of a win-win situation all the way around for everybody involved. We saw positive outcomes all around for each and every person and for the hospital. And the thing is, sometimes it takes just fresh eyes looking at it and saying, hey, why are we doing it this way? Let's change this up. Why don't we do it this way? And the words "we've always done it this way" are killers to innovation and revolution.
And I love that, fresh set of eyes. And there's, we hear that people with disabilities and the community needs to be at the table for every level of decision making, because they bring a fresh set of eyes that other people that maybe aren't familiar or don't have a disability don't see through that lens. But to have that holistic approach there. And when you're talking about the hospital, I mean, so right off the bat, you're saving the hospital money,
right?
$20 an hour, basically. The nurses are feeling better because they're feeling like they're not overworked. And I imagine long-term, the hospital is saving a ton of money, because if you get overworked nurses, they're more likely to make a mistake with a patient, which could be a couple years of litigation or whatever that looks like. So just all around, they're saving money right off the go. Their nurses are feeling better, and their long-term outreach or outlook is looking a lot better there.
Right, and then you've got the long-term personal outlooks. What about the individuals who were already working there, the employees already working there, who had never been exposed to people with disabilities, that thought they were so limited in their capability? Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, you know what? These folks with disabilities are capable of doing all kinds of things. So their mindset has now shifted. And if they're parents, they're going to take that home to their children, who are going to take that into the school, who are then going to take that on somewhere else. And so, you've basically got this paradigm shift completely when it comes to that environment.
Now, I would think that, I know as an employer that it is tough to find people right now, with the pandemic and coming out of that. I imagine right now is a great time to get hired, and employers are looking for people. So are you guys kind of making a big push right now to employers like, hey, we have people that want to work?
Our providers who do have people who want to work, and some don't because of the issues with the pandemic, with underlying health conditions or things of that nature. But for those who want to work, our providers are making those pushes now to help get people out into the workforce. And I think this is a great opportunity. The pandemic has offered an opportunity where providers who focused mainly on dehabilitation or having individuals come into a room and spend the day there watching television and hanging out with their friends who just have disabilities, and then go home in the evenings, that the pandemic has resulted in sort of a shift of that. And so what we're seeing is now provider agencies shifting to this community-based model where they're getting out into the community and doing things in the community. And this is a great time for them to be able to do that because parents, I'm a parent, you're a parent, Alex, right? We all have fears for our children. We don't want our kids to get hurt, man. We don't want them to be exposed to negative things. We just don't.
Kind of want to caught a little bit of a bubble sometimes.
Yeah, you know, I want to grab my kids up and I want to hold them back because I don't want them to go through, you know, things that I went through, right? And
I feel like sometimes that can restrict their growth, though, in a way.
we do, and there's always the stories. When sheltered workshops began to close around the state, parents really opposed the closing of the sheltered workshops. As a parent, I understand why. I completely get it. I trust me, I'm with you. Right? This was a safe place for your child to go. But as parents began to open up to the idea of their children going out into the community, either adult children with disabilities or children, and they did go out into the community and they started seeing them gain new friends and new groups of friends and have new experiences and learn new life lessons and be exposed to new, wonderful, amazing things and have a more rich and more full life. The parents began to shift their mindset. Now, when we're talking about going back to work, and you know, you touched on it a minute ago, right now with the pandemic, there is a big need out there for workers all over. Everywhere we go, man, there's help wanted signs all over the place. One of the big key questions that I'm asked on a regular basis is, hey, look, my son, my daughter, my brother, my sister, they receive benefits, SSI or Social Security, SSDI benefits. And these benefits, you know, we fought for years to get these benefits. You know, we can't lose these things.
Yeah.
If they're on the Medicaid waiver, you know, that Medicaid is an important part of that. They have to have the Medicaid waiver slot to continue to receive the services that are necessary, which might be residential services or group home services, or personal care supply services, things like that are on our waivers. And I've got great news for people who have those questions. You don't have to have those worries and concerns. We here at the Department of Mental Health have addressed that. We have community work incentive counselors, or CWICs, on staff who will work with you to help navigate those waters, so you will know how going back to work will or could potentially impact your benefits. And if somebody even expresses an interest, if they say, Alex, I would like to go back to work one day in the future, all they've got to do is get in touch with one of us. We can get you referred over to our mental health CWICs, who will be happy to work with you and do an individualized assessment on how going back to work will affect your benefits. And even if you don't have your benefits still coming in, you still can hold on to your Medicaid slot, and they can walk you through how to do that.
Okay, so we were just talking about, if someone is interested in finding employment, but maybe has a little bit of fear of losing some benefits, that the department and Alabama have services to kind of coach you through what that looks like. And if you could take us through that a little bit.
We do. The State of Alabama Department of Mental Health now employs community work incentive counselors. We have them on staff here. They're statewide. We have several, so we can reach every corner of the state of Alabama. And they go through a lot of intensive training with Social Security to be able to navigate those confusing waters. Because I'll tell you, man, speaking as someone with a disability who went through this process, there is nothing as disheartening. Make your heart drop to your stomach as fast as opening the mailbox and seeing a letter from Social Security.
Yeah.
And especially when you've worked so hard to get there, right? Some families work for 2-3 years to get approved by Social Security, and so and Medicaid utilizes that. So the waiver slots that are Medicaid slots, right? You have to have Medicaid to get a Medicaid waiver slot. So these CWICs can help somebody who wants to go back to work navigate those waters. If somebody says, hey, I want to go back to work, or I'm even thinking about going back to work, maybe one day I want to consider going back to work, they can work with our community work incentive counselors, our CWICs, to find out how that can affect their benefits, how that might look when it comes to benefits. And as they work themselves down to, let's say, a zero benefit, that doesn't mean they're going to lose their insurance, and it doesn't mean they're going to lose their Medicaid. And our CWIC will be with you every step of the way throughout that. Of course, that's a free service that's provided by the Department of Mental Health, and it's available out there. Parents, don't be afraid of work and this part of life because you're afraid of losing the benefits. There are ways and experts here on staff that are standing by to help you to make sure that we do it right. But the earlier we can bring them on board, the better. It's always better. You know, I'm reminded of a line from the book Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Right? Prevention is always better than a cure. So if we can prevent the problem from occurring by having a CWIC work with us in the beginning, I'm not saying we can't fix the problem later by curing it, but wow, is it easier to prevent it.
I think that huge, and the CWIC thing is so beneficial for individuals and families because it can be hard to navigate. You know, you're speaking with SSI, you're speaking with Medicaid. It's a lot of people. You're probably making a lot of phone calls. It's a lot of new jargon, a lot of legal words there. And so it doesn't really always hit home. So to have somebody on your side kind of walk you through that of this is what this means and this is what this will look like. And I think one of the biggest fears for myself, if I were receiving services, but I wanted to find employment, would be, you know, well, what happens if my employer goes under in a year and I'm unemployed? How quick can I get those services back, my Social Security and my insurance and the Medicaid? Because I can't go 2 months, you know, without those things.
See, the best thing about that is that your insurance doesn't necessarily go away. So you may still be holding your insurance even though you're not receiving a check monthly from Social Security. And depending on your circumstances, please, this would have to be worked out with a CWIC on an individual case-by-case basis. There's a very real and very good possibility that if your employer goes under in a year, your check starts right back.
So it's right there for you.
Yeah, safety net, man.
You're not stranded there, so you have that background. Now, you mentioned the earlier the better to get involved in employment services. What's the earliest age someone can start receiving services for employment?
Well, people start working or can start working with vocational rehabilitation while in school still. And of course, we are a partnering agency with vocational rehabilitation or the Alabama Department of Rehabilitative Services. They generally handle all of the transition ages up through the end of high school. And actually, ADRS needs to be at the table because federal law dictates that their funding sources or streams must be utilized first. Now, our CWICs can come on board early, and our discoveries and things like that, depending on where you're at and what the situation is, where you're at along the process, can take place. But VR really does a lot of that early on, sort of assessment, interventions, planning, and things like that. So as early as high school.
Okay.
But parents, you know, if you have children, junior high, elementary school, and you know that you know you may be facing some barriers along in the future, collect information, right? Hold on to those IEPs, hold on to the testing information, because these are things that you're going to be asked for eventually. Just start creating a file. Hold on to as much, right? You can never have too much paperwork and documentation when it comes to working with the government.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of it, but I'll double down on what you just said.
Yeah.
And even, you know, for all kind of life transitions there, now my grandfather, is kind of a morbid thing, but he passed away a few years ago. But he had an envelope for me, and he was always cracking jokes. The top of the envelope was, "When I die." You know, I was like, "Grandpa, don't put that on there." But it had all the information to help transition him to what he wanted his final resting place to be.
Right.
You know, so hold on to that documentation. It'll help during those times for you. Now, I was reading up before today that the disability community kind of has higher rates of unemployment than the general community at large. Why do you think that is?
Traditionally, they have, and I think a lot of that goes back to what we talked about earlier with fear. And that's fear both on the sides of employers and fear both on the side of families and individuals of going back to work. And it kind of all comes to meet in the middle. So, but I do have great news for those who are on the waiver or on the Medicaid waiver waiting list. Later this year, we will be launching the Community Waiver Program here with the Department of Mental Health. We currently have 2 waivers, the Living at Home Waiver and the IDDD, or Intellectual Developmental Disabilities Waiver. And we're adding a 3rd, the Community Waiver Program. This waiver is very specifically targeted towards employment services and community-based services. And so a lot of education is going on here. And so the idea here is to help increase not just exposure to employment, but in exposure of communities and businesses to individuals with disabilities. So it works both ways, and hopefully increase and see the number of individuals with disabilities across the state be increased.
So you have 2 entities there that you're really targeting at the individuals that are in a community-based setting, and then you also have the employers that you're trying to educate about employment there.
Absolutely. We actually call it a dual customer base. So, I mean, or dual customer approach, yeah.
Now, if someone's interested in getting on that waiver, are there individuals, is that more for people that are on the waiting list, or are there some going to be transferred from the other waivers?
They will have the opportunity, and I can't speak too much to it, but they will have the opportunity to transfer. Right now it's being launched only in select areas in October as a pilot, and then the rollout will be statewide eventually. Yeah. So the idea here is to start small and then work our way up. Up here in the northern part of the state, Madison, Morgan County, I think up here, and then in Jefferson County, Birmingham, Mobile, there are several areas throughout the state where this will be piloted. People who are already on the waiting list, some have been contacted, and then some people who have services through the IDDD and LAH waiver who may be interested have been contacted. I suggest that you speak with your case manager if you're already on the Medicaid waiver, and you may be in one of those areas that might be targeted.
Yeah, so you could get on that pilot program, or when it rolls out, and kind of work through the kinks in the first few months, maybe a year. Get on when it goes to full scale there.
Right.
You said dual. What was that? Dual
customer approach. Yeah, businesses and where our consumers are a customer, and then our businesses are also our customer. And this goes back to really sort of the first step, and one of the big services, and something I'm quite passionate about when it comes to our new waiver, and then a service that is now available through our current waiver, is called the discovery process. The discovery process is very heavily focused on this dual customer base. What does our consumer and individual need, and what also does our business need? So as we focus on those 2 needs, we try to find the balance between those. Mm-hmm. Discovery is a very informal, I hate to use the word assessment because it's really not an assessment. It's an informal relationship that's built with a consumer and their family and their support system to help find the right fit based off their strengths, their needs, and their interests, to help them find the job that's right for them, something that they will love to do. I absolutely love my job. This is my older brother. Actually, when I started working back on the Disability Employment Initiative and was describing it to him, he laughed and he said, I couldn't possibly imagine something that's more in your wheelhouse than this right here. And so, when you find that perfect fit, right, going to work is no longer going to work. Going to work becomes a passion. And so if we can find that passion early on, through the discovery process, and really getting to know somebody, what makes them tick, what makes them who they are, and what their needs are, what their strengths are, what their interests are, then the possibility of long-term success in that position of employment grows exponentially.
As you're going through that discovery process, I feel like everybody should go through that, and we would have people that enjoyed work a little bit more, or a lot more, actually.
Oh yeah, I mean it could be, and when I train on this at different areas in the state, and have all over the state several times, that always comes up, and I always respond the same way. Oh yeah, this is something that could be beneficial for all of us, along with the job carving that we talked about earlier, right? If you typically when you go, or traditionally, right, there's a job and a job description. You have a job and a title and the description, and these are what the job does. And if we could pick out, right, if we could customize through customized employment, another part of supported employment, if we could customize these jobs to include this part and this part, but not necessarily this part, not necessarily this part, but this person over here likes doing part C and D, right? Then you start shifting things out, and people's level of job satisfaction really grows.
Skyrockets there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I feel like this is a pilot for all high schools to incorporate, for their entire student body, finding that dream job there. Now, I have a question. You mentioned that through the discovery process, you discover what's really going to make you happy and go at work there. Now, I've noticed for myself, I've held jobs where I was happy, but then over the years, I wanted to try something different. Can I go back through the process if I was receiving employment services like that?
If you're receiving employment services, discovery can take place again later on. Of course, it has to be documented as to why. Now, that's the intense sort of immersive discovery. That's the initial discovery process. But we can come back and reassess things as needs and interests change. I'm sure job coaches, service providers, as we grow and lives change and interests change, right? Just because you're in a job doesn't mean you're there forever.
Yeah.
So things can always be looked at and always be adjusted, right? Because overall happiness, higher quality of life is our ultimate goal.
Yeah, I think it's important to be able to not feel like you have, because that's a lot of pressure. And if you're in your early 20s and even your teens, like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? Like, I have no idea.
Oh man, listen, what the line from a song, right? Some of the most interesting 20-year-olds I know didn't know what they wanted to do with their life, and some of the most interesting 40-year-olds I know still don't want to know what they want to do with the rest of their lives.
Is it another line from that song?
That's Boz Luhrmann, man.
Be kind to your knees.
That's it. Yep, be kind to your knees.
Yes, that's a great one. Yeah, so I being able to go back in there and because I've held multiple jobs throughout my life, and I think it's your interest, like you said, you grow and you change, and you want to conquer something else or try something else, and to be able to go back into that. Now, what would it look like if someone with a disability or a parent was watching this, is watching this? What would it look like, kind of start to finish, the process for employment services? They're thinking about going out into the workforce. They're not sure what that looks like. How would that look like? And I know each individual, it'll be individualized, but if you could give an overall process example.
Okay. All right. So, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to try to break this down into the most simplistic way possible.
Please.
Here would be the potential steps. Number one would be to contact vocational rehabilitation and start that process. Number two, on almost simultaneously, if you feel like they would qualify for the waiver, the Medicaid waiver, and that information is available on our website. And my partner in Birmingham, who's watching the broadcast right now, will, I'm sure, post either a link to that or an information for a 1-800 number to the call center so that people can call that call center. That would be step number two. All right, and then you'll do the eligibility process for the waiver as well as for vocational rehabilitation. At that point, the ball starts rolling, right? So we start finding out through discovery who you are, right? And what are the services that are needed. And there's a lot of interviews, and really those two kind of run simultaneously. And what do they need? And then along the way, a job developer comes on board. Once assessments are done and we find out kind of where you want to go, once we've done some career exploration and based off of these interests and strengths, and we identify barriers. Is there some assistive technology that needs to be brought in? Do we need one-on-ones? So does somebody need somebody with them all the time, or do you just need occasionally? Do you just need support? As those things are identified and the solutions are identified as to how to address them, then the job developer would find the appropriate position and then help secure the job. We would coach job interview processes and filling out applications and building resumes and all the great stuff that we love to do when looking for jobs. And
Yeah, I don't know if I'd.
yeah,
Sometimes
little tongue in cheek there,
one of the most frustrating things is to upload your resume and then also input the same information
in the application.
in the application that the company has. It's so frustrating.
It really is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then we once the job is secured, right, we make a determination as to long-term supports that are necessary, and eventually now vocational rehabilitation will fade out or fade away. And if you're a Medicaid waiver recipient, you will continue, right, with those long-term job supports
that are available under the community waiver.
Right, that are available under all the waivers right now, and those would be things like job coaching.
Yeah.
Your job coach might come in every day. Your job coach might come in once a week or once a month or once a quarter. It really is based on the individual needs.
Now, I know that it's really, I'm going to ask you a tough one here,
Okay.
but let's say it went picture perfect for that process.
Mm-hmm.
About how long do you think that would take from somebody contacting to getting their job and kind of moving through that?
That's difficult to answer,
It
Alex,
is.
because there's a lot of factors here.
Mm-hmm. But I don't want someone to say, oh, if I contact them this week, I'll have a job by the end of the week.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect that. That's a very unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
I've had, I had a job coach once tell me I don't have a drawer full of jobs.
Yeah.
Although in this environment, I don't know, we may have drawerfuls of jobs sitting around. Really, everything takes time to go through the eligibility process and the VR intake process. I mean, it could take 30 days. And then they start gathering records and assessments, and the discovery process alone, if we were to do an intensive discovery, could take a few months. Mm-hmm. Because the idea here is to become part of someone's life, and you can't get to know someone in a week.
Yeah.
And so, but think of it like this, Alex, if you will. If you put in the hard work on the front end, then the outcome will be greater. The quality of the end result can really be valuable.
Yeah, you need to plan ahead a little bit. It's not like I need a job next month, so I'm going to call them now.
Yeah, that's rough. That's a hard spot to be in. There's a lot of places out there that just need warm bodies right now, but
you may not be as satisfied long term in that position.
Yeah, that'd be exactly what I would ask. Do you just want to fill a slot, or do you really want satisfaction out of life?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the other side of that dual customer base. How are you guys, what is the main outreach to businesses? And are those larger businesses that have quite a few employees, or are they more smaller local businesses?
It can be both, large and small businesses, and that's handled a lot by those job developers. Vocational rehabilitation has business service representatives that go out and speak to businesses. The local career centers have business service representatives. And then there are job developers on staff for our local provider agencies that go out and work with businesses. But when I was working with the grant, I was stationed in the Coleman Career Center, and here's what I found to be most productive. It's all about the network building, And I mean, I knew a guy in high school who now managed this certain area. And so, I would go talk to him. And then if I wanted to get into business A down here and then business B, right, you'd build relationships. And good job developers do just that. And they balance making good relationships with those businesses, both large and small, without overwhelming the businesses.
I've always kind of encouraged individuals and families, like if your son or daughter, or you really enjoy going to your local community, whatever that is, restaurant or whatever that store is, that company is, get to know the owner or the hiring manager, whoever runs that store. And that, like you said, use your network and make relationships.
Yeah, man. There's this story that I tell during discovery training about a young man in Mississippi. And right, always remember, person-centered plan is the center of everything we do. So our consumer drives our plan. They're the one who makes the choice about everybody who's who's a part of the team. They're the one who makes the choice about where we're going to go and what the jobs are. I'm not making the choice. The parents don't make the choice. The individual, the consumer makes the choice. We're here to fill the gaps. And there's this great story that I tell about a young man in Mississippi who part part of the discovery process is talking to people, right? Family members or people in the community who may know. And he had developed this great relationship with the mailman and loved getting the mail every single day. And he would go out and meet the mailman. And then as months and months passed, the mailman got to know him and would stop and talk for 10 or 15 minutes before going on his way and going back to work. And he said, I want the mailman to be a part of, I want you to talk to him about who I am. And so the person doing the discovery thought it was kind of crazy, but hey, the person drives the plan. So he talked to the mailman, and come to find out, the mailman's brother actually owned a business where this person's ideal job was.
Really?
And so they were able to leverage that connection to get him the job in his dream location of what he wanted to do. And he was successful there.
That's
and
amazing.
That connection never would have been made had this person not said, I want you to talk to the mailman. So, I mean, we never know where our connections will lead us through our network.
Yeah, you just got to be able to make that step and kind of reach out a little, put yourself out there a little bit, and allow those relationships to grow naturally. And you guys have, we're actually, I think we're going to put a link to the YouTube video that you guys created and show some of those success stories that you've highlighted in the past. I think it'd be really cool if you're okay with that.
Oh yeah, man, absolutely. Link to us, and we'll actually have more success stories coming up that should go up on our YouTube channel after the 1st of August. That are going to be highlighted at an upcoming conference. And if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and talk about that for just a second.
Please.
August 5th and 6th, the Alabama APSE, the Alabama chapter of the Association of People Supported Employment, in conjunction with the ACDD, or the Alabama Council on Developmental Disabilities, is hosting our annual conference. And we're doing that this year through a virtual platform. My partner in Birmingham, I'm sure right now in the comments, should be posting the link to the promo videos and the link to registration. So anybody out there that's interested in supported employment or learning more, there will be motivational speakers, inspiring speakers, and then the second day we'll have 2 different tracks. One will be continuing education, focusing on ethics for those out there who are professionals that need those continuing education tracks. The others will be for consumers and families, specifically focusing on this community waiver program, and then benefits planning, I think is going to be a part of it, or the CWICs and benefits planning, and then other information that's important to consumers.
So if you guys have the time, I highly recommend that. If you are interested in getting a job, or you're a family member of someone that you love who's interested in getting employment, or if you're a business owner and interested in learning more about what that looks like employing people with disability, jump on this 5th and 6th conference. You can do it anywhere in the world. Doesn't matter if you're at the beach. Go ahead and take your beach days and take your phone with you to the beach and kind of zoom in there.
And next year we will be back in person, live in Montgomery,
which is what I like.
Yes, and
I love that.
It's always one of the best and one of my most favorite conferences to go to anywhere across the country. It's very interactive, and it's always we always get a lot of great feedback about the information that's brought in, and the networking that takes place there.
Yeah, I just like being around people. I'm kind of an outgoing person, like meeting new people.
Yeah.
Pandemic's been a little bit rough on me.
I'm telling you, man.
For that.
It's hard on us extroverts, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's like I'm yearning. Like, I haven't seen my family. I just want to hug, my family. Like, I need you guys. Now here's a kind of a question for you. Is there a job for everyone?
Yes, there is a job for everyone. Some people, and it really just for me personally, it's one of those things, man. They'll never work. I can't stand the phrase. They can't work. They can't work. Anybody can work. If anybody wants to work, anybody can work. Employment first and employment for all. That's our goal. If you want to work, we want to help you find work. So yes, anyone can work. And it might not be traditionally what someone would consider work, but you know what? I've been a part of and also seen plenty of cases where what work was to one person wasn't work to somebody else, but it was fulfilling that aspect of life that gave them an opportunity to be a part of their community.
Yeah, I love that answer. And it may look different for that individual, whatever they want to do, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't bring them satisfaction and pride to complete that task.
Yep.
Now, if somebody Excuse me. Now, as for my family member, she is a little bit older. Well, I'm not going to say her age now that I've said that she's a little bit older. She's older than I am. But she needs one-on-one support throughout the day. And what does that look like for someone that needs one-on-one support in the work environment? Can somebody still be there with them during that time?
Yes, most of the time we find a lot of employers who are very open to that. One-on-one supports can and oftentimes are part of that work world for individuals who require that type of intensive care. And for those who don't necessarily need that, that's fine. That's not necessary. Natural supports can help with that, but again, job coaches may be there the entire shift or the entire day, or the natural supports may fill those slots. Or again, one of the Medicaid waiver services that I briefly mentioned earlier might be personal care at the work site. That might be an additional person that comes in to help with more personal needs at the work site. Or maybe they need to take medication and a nurse comes in just briefly to assist them with medication needs during their time. So yeah, so it's somebody's not just put out there and left alone and said, hey, good luck, you got you a job, good luck, and we hope everything goes well for you. Let us know. That's not how things operate. Our job is start to finish. Let's provide the supports and let's really change not just that one individual life. Y'all, let's change our entire environment.
Yeah, the thinking there, and I think maybe some of the individuals or families that have children that need the one-on-one supports may be saying, well, there's no way or that they can find employment there because they need somebody with them all the time. But you're saying that's totally cool.
Yeah, that's completely cool. Yeah. And you know what? My advice to those parents would be, as a parent earlier, and I keep going back to my kids. When I work with other parents, my kids are at the forefront of my mind. What would I do, right, with my kids? Again, it's hard sometimes for us to let go, but my advice sometimes with those parents are, as hard as it is to let go and trust, you've got to trust your child a little bit and hope that things go well. Hey, monitor for a day or two from a distance and then slowly fade away, and then work with them when they get home about how their day went.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of like letting go a little bit and allowing your child to impress you.
That's a hard thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, we were talking with United Ability last week and their new CEO, Susan Sellers, and she was telling a story about their playground there, and all types of kids there, people with disabilities, people without. And some of the parents were a little bit nervous, like, no, I don't want my child going out there, kind of roughhousing, doing that kind of stuff. And next thing you know, everything's integrated. They're watching their child just having the time of their life. And like, I didn't know you could do that. Sometimes you just got to let them go and they'll surprise you.
Yeah.
Step back a little bit.
Yeah. My little girl is doing gymnastics right now, Alex. And for the first month of her gymnastics, we weren't allowed in the building because of the pandemic. And my wife said to me, I'm really kind of thankful that we're not allowed in, because the things she's describing that she's doing, I don't think I could let her do. Yeah. And so by the time they let us in, she had already gotten some practice in on some of those more, what we would consider more dangerous aspects.
Yeah. That's too funny. Mrs. Maddox, I really appreciate you being here and posting those links on the YouTube videos. So thank you very much for doing that. We're kind of getting to the end of our broadcast here. And we did mention that the APSI ACDD conference is coming up August 5th and 6th. Are there any other upcoming events that you would really recommend people attend?
Off the top of my head, not that I can think of. But if I do think of something, I will make sure to forward that on down to the Care Network and make sure that you guys get that posted and share that to you as well.
Yeah, for sure. Mrs. Maddox also posted your email, so you're blasted out there.
Absolutely, yeah. So she should be posting my email information as well as hers and Jennifer Carpenter, who is down in Region 3 in the Mobile area. So that anyone who is interested in going back to work, you can contact any of us, as well as if you would like to get in touch with our CWICs to discuss how going back to work can affect your benefits, we can help get you in touch with them and get that process started for you.
And I would say if you're thinking about, you're looking for employment in the future or you're thinking about it, strike while the iron is hot right now.
Yes.
I know employers are looking for people that want to work and do a good job. So, they're very eager to having new employees. Strike while the iron's hot. You might get right in the door, within the next month. You never know.
Yeah.
But don't, as we mentioned, don't expect a month. Maybe allow for a few months there to go through the process. Now, as we come to a close today, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think the community could benefit from hearing?
Oh, goodness, we've covered a lot of ground today, Alex.
We sure have.
And we've done it really fast. So, no. I think we've got a pretty decent cover over it. Again, if people have questions, they can reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to help. Just remember, VR is an active partner in this. Just jumping onto the Medicaid waiver is not necessarily an option, because if you contact and say, hey, we're on the Medicaid waiver or Medicaid waiting list, one of the first things we're going to ask is, have you contacted vocational rehabilitation? Because VR needs to be brought onto the table. That is, again, that's federal law. So that's going to be an important aspect.
So make sure you're going through the correct process there and keep your documentation with you along the way.
Please do.
Yes. Well, Mr. Greer, we really appreciate you spending the morning with us and educating us about what's available through the state and through your services.
It's my pleasure, Alex.
I'm really excited about what this is going to look like in a few years, 1 or 2 years down the road, and the percentage of people that are employed through the services that you guys provide. We
are too. The Office of Supported Employment, we are on fire, and really our vision for the state of Alabama is pretty grand. So we've got a great staff and a wonderful leader, and we are really looking forward to what we can do here with the Department of Mental Health.
Is there anything that we at Alabama Care and the community can do to support you guys? Anything that we need to do there?
You know what? Just always be, always remember to be inclusive, right? When we see folks with disabilities, don't be too standoffish. Don't be worried about interacting with people. Don't be worried about offending people. Hey, we're all the same. Virginia and I do a training on disability etiquette around the state, and the key thread that runs throughout that entire training is that regardless of the disability or race or gender or socioeconomic status or anything else, we are more alike than we are different. And I think that is a very important key component that we all need to remember.
I agree. Very well said. Well, at this point, we're going to go ahead and end the broadcast. We appreciate you guys being here with us today, and we will see you guys next week. And what we can do is we'll each say goodbye to our respective cameras.
Thanks, guys.